Hey there, product people. Are you ready to explore the latest practices and techniques of today's most successful tech product companies? We bet you are. It's time to learn how to be the voice for both the user and the business. It's time for PMC Explore, powered by Product Management Community Center.
Hi again, everyone. Definitely to be the voice means to be good at communication. And my name is Svetlana. First of all, I drive the product management community. And now we start our event with the communication expert, Jakub Kepinski. I know, Jakub, you would like to start with the intro. So the Zoom is yours. Nice to have you all here.
Thank you, Svetlana. Thank you for that little bit of an introduction. Hello to everybody. Jakub, or Kuba for short, Kepinski. Again, if you can, it's always nice to see people. If you can have your camera on, that would be great. I'm going to be sharing my screen. And because we have, for now, a relatively small group, we'd really like to hear from you. So again, use the chat box in Zoom or unmute yourself. There's going to be a few chances for us to interact today, a few different activities, right? So let's see how it goes. Sharing my screen. Just let me make sure I do the right thing. Now that's the right thing. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we see.
Cool, great. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with a little warm up. Right, it's evening time. I don't know if you've had your sort of dinner already or not. I've had something to eat and I usually feel sleepy when I eat, so I need to wake up. There is a picture I'll show you on the screen here in a moment. And the title of the game, little game activity, is called What's Missing? So you're going to see a picture made up of 6 parts, but one of the parts is missing. And in the chat box here in Zoom, I'd like you to put what you think is the missing part. Are you ready? Here's the picture.
We don't see the picture.
You are sharing your presentation internal, but not the presentation mode.
Maybe that was the purpose. Maybe that's what's missing.
That's
no,
okay.
Let me share my screen. That's going to be a lot easier.
Can you see the picture? Yes.
Right. So in the chat box, if you could type what you think is missing. Let's have a look. We have some coming. We have 0s. We have 6. Okay. No, it's not 0. It's not 6. Have another go. Okay, we have 15. Interesting. We have nothing. Okay. Well, we have to put something there. I might give you a little clue, a little tip. Let's see. Some more are coming. 1, 8. Okay. This distribution of numbers, these 6 numbers, most of us probably see this in everyday life.
But in like old school way.
In old school way, I don't know. 6, right? Bigger picture. And now think of cars. That's my final clue. Think of cars. Okay, some answers are coming. The letter R, yes, the rear gear. So think of a gearbox. Again, they're different. You can have a manual, automatic, 6 gears, 5 gears. That's the one that I have. So I hope that your brains have woken up a bit. And the big question is, why am I showing you this? We're talking about communication. There's something about FBI people. Well, because communication with other people is very much like this. When we communicate with others, we think we know a lot of the things. We think we know how they're going to behave, what they're going to say. We often think that people are similar to us. And we think with a 0 or a 6. But quite often it's something completely different. So this invitation today is just an invitation for you to maybe start looking things from a slightly different perspective. And let's test something first, actually. As you can see, I've had a few problems with my PowerPoint. So let's test something in Zoom. there is a feature of Zoom called Annotate. And you can see this on my screen. If you go to the top of your Zoom screen, you should see this green and black bar. And then if you choose View Options and you go down where you see this option called Annotate, you should be able to use a pen. I can see that Vlad is using it, or a stamp. You can see there are some symbols. They will look like a star or a heart. Let's test it on my screen. Cool. So I can see that it works. Thank you for that. So you're gonna use this Annotate because I would like to find out a bit more about you and communication. Give yourself a moment to look at these 11 pictures on my screen and think of one which answers the question I'm asking at the top. In other words, how do you feel about communication in your context? Meaning with your stakeholders or with the clients or with your team, and annotate maybe one of those. Right, excellent. The time is good, so I would love to hear maybe from 2, 3 of you. Maybe there is somebody who would like to unmute themselves and explain why they chose a particular image.
Maybe I could start.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Nadia. Yeah.
I chose the bottom right corner where 2 fingers are kind of hugging each other, right? Because that's what I feel about communicating with my stakeholders, both and also from the teammates that I have from the project manager perspective, because I'm a project manager. Mm-hmm. So that's how I feel about communicating with them. Is that what was the question? Did I answer it?
So maybe why did you choose this particular image? Because I can see some smiley faces. I can see that people are hugging each other. Is there any connection to your context?
Yeah, perhaps of all of these images, that's what our communication most likely could be described with the picture. Nobody is trying to roll you or nobody's trying to push you. Everybody is supporting each other and helping with any question that you have, even if it's just a live question. That's why I have this kind of impression of communication.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Nadia. Maybe there's one more person who would like to unmute themselves and share why they chose a particular.
Yeah, I can jump in here. I choose left corner below, and it's with cow and girl. Why I choose it? Because the easiest way to communicate with someone and to get a sympathy from someone is just to copy the behavior of this one. And as for me, girl just copying the behavior of cow, and maybe it's of course not, because it's not about communication between a girl and a cow, but it is about communication, because she's copying the behavior. She's trying to get a sympathize to. So that's why I choose it.
Right, Volodymyr, thank you for sharing. There's this concept called mirroring, right? Some people talk about client or job interviews in mirroring. Thank you for that. So I know a little bit more about you here. So let's move on. Let's move on. We've got a lot of context to go through here. And we're going to start with a little bit of an agenda, just so that you know what we're going to discuss. We'll talk a little bit about FBI and a definition of a great communicator, according to the FBI. Then we'll look today, you're going to get a few very practical tips that I hope you're going to take with you. Something called the Mindmap that helps us to basically to kind of mind map the people that we communicate with. We'll talk a little bit about small talk as a tool, and then we're going to deep dive into a few little techniques used actually by FBI negotiators. Now, one disclaimer, I'm not an FBI negotiator. I've never been. Maybe that would be an exciting prospect, but actually I'm not even a professional negotiator. But there are a few things that I have definitely learned from people who are these FBI negotiators and like to share them with you today. So, with a little bit of an introduction, it's a good question of why am I here today with you, since I'm not an FBI negotiator, and Svetlana has introduced me as a communication expert, which could mean anything. So actually, the three biggest communication lessons of my career are the things I've learned from drunk people, from priests, and from teenagers. Interesting, right? Drunk people. When I was younger, a college kid, I used to spend quite a lot of time working in restaurants behind the bar, and I learned that talking to drunk people is tricky. But if you can persuade a drunk person in the middle of the night to leave the place or stop arguing, I think you can manage most escalations in any context. And then if I think about priests, I think about great presenting skills. If you're ever in the UK or in America, I'd say go to a Black church, African-American church. And the power of storytelling, the call to action, the visual language, amazing things. And finally, teenagers. Might be a surprise to some of you. Actually, many years ago, I used to work as a school teacher in the south of England. And you know what? Talking to teenagers is a bit like talking to drunk people. There's no logic. There are only emotions. So, you know what? Most of the things I know about communication, I have never learned in a big corporation. And now people are discovering FBI agents, people like Joe Navarro or Chris Voss, who are now working as communication experts or consultants. There's a lot we can learn from them. And I hope that today you will learn a few things. So the first question is, what is a definition? What is the single most important thing for an FBI negotiator or communicator? Post your answer in the chat box. What do you think is the most important thing for an FBI communicator or negotiator? Okay, I can see some of these are coming. Listening, to be confident, read through people, observer, find persuasive agreement, conspiracy, that's a nice one. You never know, she's from the FBI, ability to reach the goal, empathy, lots and lots of ideas. Okay, great. Now, one of you probably would get a point, a tick. Great communicators are, above all, great observers. So these are people who are, number one, word detectives. They can really read through words or behind the words, but they can also read messages, feelings, and other things. So remember, everything starts with communication and observing, which brings us to the second part. And it's a question. Again, you can use reactions. You know, we have these emoticons here. You can put a thumbs up. Do you like, or did you like, Lego when you were younger? Okay, so we have some ticks and things, great. Now, I used to love them too when I was younger. And you know what I remember is that when you have enough Lego blocks, different shapes and sizes, you can build almost anything. So a great place to be is when I was a kid and I had this red box full of different Lego blocks, and I was able to build a car or a house or even a street. Now, what's the connection to communication? The connection is simple. When we are communicating with people, and this is true not only for FBI communicators, for anybody, we are building a picture of the person who is on the other side. Think about it. When you make small talk, you listen to how these people talk. Are they open or not? Formal or informal? When you ask them a question, do they just say yes, no? Or do they also ask you a question? Think about going to a presentation. How do these people present? Do they start with a story or do they start with lots of details and information? All of those things can really help us. And there's something super practical I would like to share with you, but I can see some more things in the chat box. And this is something I call the mind map. I think it's a relatively simple concept once you understand it. There is a link at the bottom, and when Svetlana is sending you a message after this session, you're going to get some of those links. Now, when we are observing people, it's a good idea to focus on something specific. And there are 5 things I would recommend to start focusing on. And these things are hierarchy, identity, expectations, ambiguity, and time. What does that mean? That means that when you're looking at somebody else, their communication, you can think about the power distance between you and them, or them and other stakeholders. If the power distance is high, right, it means that you've got to observe more and learn very well who is who, because maybe this person is on a completely level from you, they won't interact with you. But if the power distance is low, think of somebody from a Scandinavian startup, very egalitarian country. You go to school in Scandinavia, you talk to your teacher using their first name. So if that's the case, those people expect to be treated gently and they want others to participate. So questions are super important. So think about this hierarchy. Identity is connected to how individualistic or collectivistic these people are. Individualistic people love giving open feedback. They use the word I a lot, and very often trust for them is exchange of things. You do me a favor, I'm going to do you a favor, and we can trust each other. But when people are collectivistic, it means that you have to be careful with your feedback, and you have to be also careful with how you communicate with them. Expectations, right? Think about it, the people that you communicate with, your stakeholder. Are they interested in achievement and winning? Do they like competition? Do they appreciate when you give your solutions or ideas and they like that challenge? Or are they much more interested in harmony? And here, maybe before they make a decision, they want to check it with everybody on the team before they make up their final decision. This is a big thing that we should observe. Ambiguity is connected to how people look at the unknown or changes, things they don't know. Think about a presentation. If somebody starts a presentation with lots of details, or if you work with somebody who loves rules, maybe this could mean that they are skeptical of changes or the unknown. They want to have things under control. But I work in an IT company when many people have this agile mindset, which means that they're used to sudden changes, not knowing everything. Observe those behaviors. And time, pretty simple. Are these people that you work with more long-term or short-term related? Here, the thing to look out for is patience. I am a typical person, short-term. So if you give me a presentation and you show me 3 slides with numbers, figures, and backgrounds, you're going to put me to sleep because I want to hear the big message. So once you understand that, we're going to do just a tiny little bit of drawing here. Think about, right? Think about who the person is. What is their approach to all of those things? And like with the Lego blocks, pick up the pieces and then try to test them in real life situations. For example, if you have to convince them or pitch to them. So the mind map is the beginning, collecting information about people and then being able to move. Small talk, right? People say there's nothing small in small talk, and I think we can agree. In the chat box, again, I would love to hear from you. Type the reason why you personally make small talk with other people. Why do you do it? Okay, break the ice, very popular one. Get the connection, interesting. To comfort people. To fill the silent moments. Right. You know what? There are no good or bad reasons for making small talk. We all do them for different reasons. But if you think about FBI negotiators, Joe Navarro might be a good example. You might want to look him up. They talk about the same thing, which is about building rapport and connections. When you make small talk, not just in the first conversation you have with that person, but every single interaction with them, use those 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes to connect. How can you do this? Discover similarities, what you have in common. We have lots of similarities, even though we live in different countries. Show that you remember, right? Your mind map. Remember, you're making notes of different things. If somebody tells you that they're moving a house, after 3 weeks, ask them, how did I go moving house? Was it okay? And you might be surprised. The feedback I usually get is, wow, you remember? I've already forgotten about it. It makes people feel important. There's also a reason we share fuck-ups, little stories like that, in small talk, just to build that little bit of intimacy. I might share something small with you, something little. I'm selective about it, and I'm giving you the chance to do the same. So small talk can definitely help. Right. I can see some more comments here. Building the trust, right. Gathering some data, definitely. That's what we were talking about. So this now takes us to, I guess, the meat of this session. So think of the previous slides as a little bit of introduction. Now, emotional drivers. On the next slide, I will introduce to you Mr. Chris Voss, very famous ex-FBI negotiator who's now a business guru, business coach. If you want to attend his workshops, I think he charges $25,000 for a weekend course. So he must be really good at what he does. And one of the things he discovered is the same thing I discovered when I used to work behind the bar or with teenagers, which is people are not logical. We're not logical. We're all emotional. Even if we think we are very logical, we're not. Talk to any salesperson and they will tell you something simple. We buy things with our hearts, but we justify the reason with our minds. Now, a part of the success is to discover what is it that moves people? What is it that drives them? And obviously, in many cases, questions will help us, right? We'll discover things about people. But maybe it's happened to you as well. You took part in some kind of a session, people were asking you questions, and you thought at the end of it, they were interviewing me. They were pushing me with those questions. Especially if they ask you a lot of closed questions, yes, no questions. Sometimes I think, do they have a checklist and they're just ticking the boxes? So obviously opening your questions is one thing, but there are two more techniques. I'm going to share them with you. We'll look at an example and then you'll have a chance to practice this actually on me today, okay? So what are the two techniques? Here's a picture of Chris Voss. Really inspirational guy. If you can ever read his book, Never Split the Difference, and even follow him on social media, I think we can all learn a lot from him. Labels and mirrors. Here is the concept. So the idea is, how can we discover more about people, these emotional drivers, without asking them direct questions? Let's have a look. I will introduce to you a little bit of a story, and we're going to look at dialogue lines, and I'll be asking you questions. So again, please unmute yourself, share a comment. Let's imagine a little bit of context that you are talking with somebody on, let's say, the client side, and this is a person you know quite well. Maybe you've built this mind map about them, the hierarchy, individualism, ambiguity. You have a pretty good relationship, and you meet, and you start by saying, "Hey, Paul." And then Paul goes, "Hey, sorry for not coming back to you earlier. It's been a really manic week." So what do you say? "It sounds like you wish it was weekend already." And then Paul goes, "Well, maybe. There's so many changes here now." Changes? A few key people have been moved to another project. Another project? Yes, they've been moved from my team. You've met Mark, you remember Mark? Great guy, great ideas. They're bringing new folks now. It seems like you'd like Mark to stay put. Do I have that right? Mark alone is 50% of the team, to be honest. Let's stop here for a moment and let's think about what happened. Right? Can you notice, let's say that we are this person B. Can you notice, you can unmute yourself and comment what this person has done. How did they get more information? How did they allow, Paul to open up a bit?
He was open, he was interested in situation, he was asking questions that were up to point. So he was not trying to cover with some additional details, but he showed interest and maybe even some support. He was not only interested, but he was involved in this.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Anyone else maybe would like to
He was using mirroring by paraphrasing his words.
Okay, so he was using mirroring. Could you give an example, Dimitri?
Sure. There are changes here now. Changes.
Right.
Move to another project. Another project.
Right.
A person wouldn't also start sharing or even oversharing if they're starting their first sentence with, hey, sorry, and excuses, telling some part of the story. It means they already want to share a bit more.
Mm-hmm. Right. Notice that these mirrors, or they're also called echo questions, they're basically us being a little bit of a parrot. So the idea is here is we just repeat the final 1, 2, 3 words of what the other person is saying. And we're just careful with our intonation, right? So we don't say changes, another project, because then it would mean, I understand how you're feeling. We're raising our intonation. Changes, another project. It becomes a gentle way of saying, tell me more about this, right?
Could I ask a question over here?
Sure.
I was just wondering, wouldn't be irritating, like if I would be a person A, I would be a little bit irritated with all those shortly asked questions, which is like just rephrasing and repeating after me.
That's
How
a good
can you
question.
deal with that?
Probably you'd be careful not to use them too much, right? And also some of the feedback, and again, everything that you're going to hear today, don't take my words as a Bible. One of the things is take something from today, test it and get feedback. A lot of the people that I work with in Softserve are Ukrainians. And I said, you know, those techniques, maybe test them in real life, test them on your wife, husband, boyfriend. And they said, you know what, when I talk to English speakers, it works. But when I tried it in Ukrainian, it didn't work for different reasons. Maybe people are not used to it, right? But yeah, that's the idea of a label, gentle way of saying, tell me more. Notice that the second thing, and you can see it here, it sounds like you wish it was weekend already. It seems like you'd like Mark to stay put. These are called labels. And what is a label essentially? When you're listening to somebody else, we said that we've got to become very good at observing. And this is definitely connected to active listening, right? So we're listening to the words of somebody else, and we're asking ourselves, what's the emotional message behind their words? Or what is it that they are not telling us? Notice here, obviously, this would be also connected to the voice and body language and so on. But yeah, we heard about a really manic week. So what you can do, you don't know what that means. Could mean that the person is just tired, and this was my label here. You know, I'm going to test my label, but I'm not going to say, I think I know how you feel. I'm just going to say, it sounds like you wish it was weekend already. And I'm going to leave it there. And I will ask the person to say, yes, that's right, or correct me, in which case he corrected me here. Notice also the last one, right? The final one kind of opened the real message. Think about it for a minute. When you hear you're talking to a client and they tell you something like, after you've given your solution, they say, well, I like your solution, but I'm not sure if we can, actually use it. You could label it. You could say, it seems like you're skeptical about the value this solution brings. And leave it there and get people to either correct you or tell you more. And obviously test it in real life. Notice that labels follow the same principle. It seems like, it sounds like, it looks like, right? So mirrors and labels. The question is, would you like to try them on me?
Yep, we can.
Sure, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to practice labels and mirrors. And this activity, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment, starts with a volunteer. So I will need a volunteer. I can see that people are dying to take part. Are there any volunteers?
It can be me, Nadia.
Nadia, great. So Nadia, what I'm going to do is in a private message, I'm going to send you 2 questions. Let me just find you on the list.
NADYA.
Zoom is very clever, you know, there is an alphabetical order. So Nadia, you should be able to see 2 questions. Can you see them?
Just a second. No. Ah, yes.
Great. I'm going to share my screen with you once again, but this time you won't see PowerPoint, but you're going to see a timer. Now, what's going to happen is this. Nadia, in a moment, will ask me 2 questions. Okay, I'm going to answer the first question, then she's going to ask me the second one. I'll give my answer. And when I have given my answer to the second question, you're going to have 4 minutes to keep the conversation going, but you can only use labels, it seems like, it looks like, it sounds like, or mirrors. No other questions or comments. No, do you, are you, I'm just going to stop you. So after I've answered these 2 questions, only labels and mirrors for 4 minutes, and then we're going to see where this gets you. How does that sound? Make sense?
Yeah, a little bit terrifying.
So now you're only asking me the 2 questions, and anybody else who wants to continue, just unmute yourself, label or mirror. I'm going to answer and we will continue. Nadia, are you ready? What's your first question?
My first question is, what are you passionate about?
So in general, I'm passionate about the outdoors.
Interesting. And what makes you passionate outdoors?
What about outdoors makes me passionate? I am passionate especially about taking kids and showing them the beauty of the natural world.
Kids?
And it's labels, mirrors from anybody.
Okay, kids?
Yeah, kids, young people. You know, I don't have kids myself, but I like taking kids and showing them mountains, forests, all places natural.
It sounds like you are really open person, and a lot of people trust you if they give you kids.
If they give me kids, well, I have some kids around me. My cousins have kids. No random people just give me kids. But am I an open person? You know, I used to work a lot with kids and young people, and maybe I'm not a typical man, but if you give me a 5-year-old for a few hours, I'm not gonna get petrified. I think I will know what to do with them.
Sounds like you'd like to have one.
Well, I would like to have kids for sure. I'm not a woman, so technically this is not so easy. But yeah, that's right.
You used to work with kids a lot. What's your experience? Where did you work with them?
Labels or mirrors only. That's not a label. That's not a mirror.
Okay.
You worked a lot with kids?
But you've mentioned it before.
Yes. Some of you might remember this little handshake pitch I gave at the start. So I talked about working as a secondary school teacher in the past. And when I was younger, you know, like 18, 19, I used to do a lot of youth work. So working with kids as a volunteer. It was not a paid job.
It seems
Looks like you have a lot
in your career.
Could you repeat that, please?
It seems that you had a drastic change in your career.
I've had a few. I've had a few changes in my career. So yeah, I've never really counted how many jobs I've had, but yeah, quite a few.
Few changes.
Yeah, a few changes. So, you know, I actually, when I went to university, college, I have a degree in media studies. So I studied film and photography. But as you can see, I've done quite a few other things along the way.
Sounds like you photography.
Maybe the last person could repeat.
Oh, sounds like you like to give back to your community.
Well, I'm not sure. Maybe one way or another I do, but maybe I don't do as much as I used to. Labels are mirrors.
You seem to enjoy a lot of different things. Is that correct?
I do. I've told you about the outdoors, working with young people. So maybe it's because of my short-term orientation. Remember, I told you this. Maybe I get bored quickly. Could be a reason for that.
Get bored of work? Maybe, okay, get bored of work?
Yeah, if something is engaging for me, if at work I have to do something that's engaging, you know, I can work for 6 hours without even a coffee break. But when things don't make much sense, you know, or they're too easy, then I'll be looking for something more challenging. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Great job. So let's stop the timer and let's go back to this slide. And I'd like to ask you a question, or maybe some questions. How much did you actually learn about me in these 4 minutes?
Quite a bit, I believe.
Quite a bit, okay. How much did I learn about you?
Nothing.
I have learned one thing about you, that you are all carefully listening to me. You weren't asking me random questions about my hobbies, or you were definitely listening to me, and we were going somewhere, right? Do you think that I felt pushed in any way, or grilled or interviewed? What do you think?
I hope that you didn't feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
I would only suggest that if I would be on your side and if I would be a client and that was a short pitch before we actually have a business communication, that would be a little bit boring from my side, because it's only like a question and then a pause and then again a question, and then like I didn't feel that interaction with the people. So if I would do a small talk, I would probably, if you say me like, I love taking kids to the theater and studying literature with them, or I love to work with the kids, I'd probably ask, do you have some, or do you plan, you know, I have a nephew and I love to take him to the theater, something like would feel like both sides have the same interest, you know?
Mm-hmm. Correct. Notice that we were practicing. This is not a natural situation. You're not going to talk to anybody and use only these two techniques. I think the idea here was just to practice using it. And I think, again, it might be cultural. Like I said, some people that I work with who are Ukrainian, they told me, these don't work too well in Ukrainian, but they've tested them in English and they said, I get something different. So again, same story to you, test and see what happens, right? Mirrors and questions usually don't push people as some questions might. Okay, so that's a thing that actually FBI negotiators are taught, are trained. And this activity, if you attend a workshop by Chris Voss, this is one of the activities that they also use. So labels and mirrors. Now, to move on. There's one more thing. We're going to talk about questions for the next 20 minutes or so, and hopefully a little bit less, so we have a little bit of time for your questions or comments. We live in the culture where questions are a tool. We ask them in a different way, but there is definitely power behind them. Now, one of the things that people are trained to do these days is to work with the word yes a lot. If you think about salespeople, there are these techniques which say you've got to start with a micro yes, and then you can get people to say yes to something bigger, and so on and so forth. Now, FBI negotiators, what they say is that they're not afraid of hearing the word no. And they're not afraid of hearing the word no right at the start, because they are aware that, like the word yes, the word no can have many meanings. Let's have a think about something really specific. Some of you might work for a big company. Some of you maybe are self-employed. You run your own business. I'm not sure. So let's imagine that you want to negotiate a better salary. That's for those of you who work for a big company. And if you are self-employed, you run your own business, maybe you want to negotiate a better rate from your clients. And let's imagine that during the negotiation, you just hear this no, you check it, it doesn't work. There's no way you can get more money. In the chat box, post what else might you ask for? If you think they can't give me more money, but maybe I can ask for something else. What could that be? Maybe you can give me some examples in the chat box. We have more holidays. What could be improved? References, right? Fewer duties, okay, network, right? So lots of ideas, okay. Free trainings. So now, that's gonna be a tricky one. So I'll definitely give you maybe a minute to think about it. Take one of those ideas, right? You can't get more money, but you can have an extra week of paid holidays, or you can get a free training. How would you phrase this idea as a question, which gives you, which makes the person on the other side say no to your question, but this no actually is a yes? So have a think about a moment. How would you take that idea? How would you phrase it as a question, which gives you no as the answer, but this no actually means yes? I'll give you a few moments to think about it. You can type it in the chat box. Okay, let's check. We've got some ideas. Do you mind if I have an extra 5 days off? Okay. Would it pose a problem for you to give me a reference? Sounds like a good no question. Do you mind? Right. Now, this is an idea, I really like yours, behind what they call a calibrated no question. What does that mean? It means that you phrase your question, which is basically your solution, your idea, in the form of a question where gives people this chance. It's very powerful when people can say no. We all know this. We can say no to somebody, even to a client. Oh, that makes us feel great. But this no is the next step for you to get closer to what you want. So think about this. Would it be a really bad idea if I got an extra week of paid holidays? Or if you're negotiating a better rate with a client, would it be a terrible idea if you introduce me to one of your partners so I could tell them about my services? You know what? I've used this to negotiate a higher salary and it worked. With some other techniques and some other things, but there is a power. And usually when people hear this question, because we're not used to hear great questions anymore, we're going to talk about it in the next slide. Very often people go, oh, no, it's not a terrible idea. That opens the conversation. So calibrated no question. Have a think about it. And definitely have a think about calibrated questions in general. Now, questions are interesting, but they're also tricky because the world that we live in at the moment, I've noticed, puts those great open questions, the what questions or the how questions, it puts them right at the bottom of hierarchy. I don't know if you have noticed, but if you listen to how people communicate, especially these days working remotely, we ask a ton of closed questions. Can you? Are you? Sometimes even when I talk to my wife, I realize that what we're just doing, we're exchanging informations with questions. Are you hungry? Do you want to eat? Can you do shopping for today because I'm busy? And then you realize that our communication is full of those closed questions. And the real thing, the real questions that open up the dialogue are the so-called open questions. The FBI folks take it one step further and they talk about this concept of a calibrated question. Again, I work for an IT company, so a lot of people propose technical solutions. So let's have a look at this little micro case. Let's say that you are talking to somebody, talking to a client, and you give them your solution, your idea of a feature, and they say this. You know, I'm afraid we can't have all of feature A just now. Plus, you know, Mark, my manager, he'll probably say no to the whole idea. Go back to this mind map thing when we talked about the importance of being a word detective, reading behind the words. And tell me a little bit, unmute yourself. Tell me what's happened here. What can you observe here in this short answer that they gave?
That there is a person, Mark, who has power to say no and whose point of view is really important.
Okay, so we have somebody there who might actually be the decision maker, right? Okay, so what could this mean for us in this conversation?
That in order to make them to implement this feature, we should ask Mark, or should go to Mark and talk to him and make him to believe that this will work.
So what could this mean is maybe I'm talking to the wrong person. Maybe I'm wasting my time because I'm not going to hear a confirmation.
For sure, but you can ask why Mark could be possibly not about this idea. And when you know it, you can go to Mark with tips and tricks and convince him, actually, based on information you got from this wrong person.
Thank you.
I have one comment.
Yes.
The thing is that we are working with assumptions. It's something that this person thinks, not Mark. So it's important considering that Mark is in higher position to approach empathetically, plus considering that this person who's talking is probably individualistic. So that means he will negotiate and confirm each step. So I think the good approach this way will be, tell me your concerns, or why Mark would think so. Maybe you have some questions unanswered. Please let me know your thoughts, your concerns. I'll try to help.
Now, how would you use labels? We've talked about labels and mirrors. So how would you find out more, this emotional driver, without asking a direct question? Any idea? Remember, we talked about seems like, it looks like, it sounds like. How would you label what's going on here?
It looks like you have added priorities right now.
Could be, right? And they could point you to the right direction. That would be an interesting label. But it definitely would be about testing. Because notice what's happening here. Maybe this person is hiding behind Mark's back. And like you said, this is an assumption, but we can test it. We can use a label, right? We can also use a calibrated no. You know, would it be a really bad idea to invite Mark to the next meeting so we can run it by him? Notice that this person is also softening a lot of the message. So when you look at those words, maybe it could mean that this is not a firm no. Maybe this is just a no now. It's a no today. But again, you could use labels or mirrors just to check. And then you would think about how to calibrate your questions to lead this person where you want to lead them. What does that mean? Calibrated questions are open questions, which very often start with how or what, but they're connected specifically to the next step. And the idea is with those questions, we often give people this illusion of control and we're taking them to our solution. So how could they look like? I could be soft and I could say, I'm curious. I think, Dima, this is what you were saying. What about this solution doesn't work for you? But again, I'll be careful maybe not to ask this why question, because I know that people often feel maybe grilled, you know, maybe pushed a bit. Why not? So what about this feature doesn't work for you? Maybe he will share, right, what it is. And maybe he tells me that it's about time, you know, it's the end of the year, Christmas is coming, people are booking holidays, we don't have time for this. So then you could calibrate your question even more. And you could say, so how could we make really good use of the time that we have? Now, when I have this conversation, maybe I have a solution already. And maybe my solution is, Okay, so let's prepare just a part of this feature, and let's give this guy and Mark a demo and show them how it works. So maybe I already have my solution, but I'm not going to give it to them. I'm going to lead them slowly and gently, because maybe, remember my mind map, maybe those are the type of people who want participation and who don't like being told. So what could I say at the end? What if we prepare a simple demo to show you both, you and Mark, the short-term value of it, step by step. And every time I ask my question, like this is what you were doing with your labels, right? I am calibrating it. I'm making it even more precise. I'm making it even better. Right. Would you folks like to practice calibrated questions a little bit?
Yes.
I can see some smiles. So let's do it. And what we're going to do, we don't have too much time, so I'm going to give you about 5 minutes for that. And the idea is this. Another case, a little case. So let's imagine, this is actually a true story, true case from Softserve, the company where I work for, but I've removed all of the names, so it becomes a generic case. Imagine that you are a project manager and you're talking to someone on the client side and you're building a team. Classic team composition call, right? Client interviews deciding who gets in and who gets not. And imagine that you've been working with this person for quite some time, and this is a program with many projects, so this is not the first time. And this is what happens. The client says, right, I can make you a deal right there. So you say, yes. I will find a new internal project for Adam, he's one of the developers, but I want something in return. Now, when they say this, you realize this is going to be a bit of a negotiation. I see. What would that be? I need Damien's commitment that in 2022, next year, he's not going to get a more exciting project elsewhere. I want his commitment that he's not going to do this to me. So you say, you mean that he will stay on the project for at least a year? Is that right? And then the person says, I want him to stay with the project forever. I want this guy here forever. In a moment, I'm going to open some breakout rooms for you. And what I'd like you to do, and I'm going to actually share this with you. So you're going to find this in the chat box. So you have it. And when you're working in your breakout rooms, I'm going to give you only 5 minutes to analyze the situation a little bit. So how would you play it? How would you maybe use some labels? It seems like it looks like to find out a bit more potential, right? How would you use calibrated questions? Right? I mean, maybe this is something you don't want to do because Damien, that guy, he doesn't want to be there, right? So I'm going to give you only 5 minutes to work with this and analyze it from this point of view we've talked about today. I hope it makes sense. So I'm going to put, we have quite a big group, so I'm going to put about 4 people per group. So let's have quite a few breakout rooms, and I'll see you folks here in 5 minutes. Okay, enjoy. Right, so we're just going to wait a few moments for everybody else to join us again. And then we'll have a look maybe at some of your ideas, right? How would you challenge this person gently with maybe a calibrated question? Volodymyr and Svetlana, what were your ideas? Maybe you could share one of them.
Okay, I can share my idea. It was like with a bit of humor here, because I wanted to say, yeah, okay, well, yeah, we're just getting back to the slave rules and we assign this person like forever. But let's be clear, it's not possible here in the modern world. So let's figure out a more something different. I mean, we can promise you a person who will work for you, not forever, but maybe as well as good as this one and later on and so on.
Volodymyr, how would you say what you've just said in one calibrated question?
So we are going back to the slave rules. It would be not a question, but it will be like a icebreaker to him to understand that we are not on the same line and we need to change our dialogue to something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody, thank you, maybe some other group, maybe you had an idea of a question, a calibrated question you could use when the client says, I want this guy to stay on the project forever. How would you challenge them with a question?
Yeah, thank you so much. We were on the call with Tatiana and Irina. They were suggesting their approaches. We didn't find a solution together. However, I have an idea. At first, I would confirm why is forever is a point. So as far as I understand, or it seems to me that you really want to keep him for a specific reason, like maybe you're worried that you might lose some knowledge about the project. Am I right?
So Dima, yeah, maybe just focus on this one. Like it seems you are worried about losing a very valuable team member. So just label it and get this person to confirm or correct you.
And after that, I'll ask, so how do you feel if I say that we actually have an internal training group, mentoring group, coaching group where people will be fostering their skills on this project? And there is an extensional knowledge sharing. So you'll get even more people with this knowledge for a cheaper price. So I'm proposing a solution, or maybe we can work on a solution as well. Think about his ideas, what he thinks about that. If he's open, if he's closed towards that.
Right. So, I like that. But I also like what FBI guys do, which is they would lead or guide, maybe that's a better word. They would guide the client to their solution. And maybe this is your solution. We have a few guys, internal, also great. So Chris Voss would ask this question. When the guy says, I want this Damon to stay on the project forever, he would say, how am I supposed to do that? He would ask for a solution, but he has one. So he's going to slowly guide this person through questions, labels, active listening. But they would start with, how am I supposed to do that?
I have a question. What if a person answers with, I don't know, I don't care, figure it out?
Interesting.
They can.
Well, they can give this answer. I would use a label. It sounds like you are skeptical about the talented folks that we have in our company. And then I would get them to confirm. Maybe they would say, no, I know you guys have a lot of talent people, but I want this guy. So now I have confirmed something, right? It can definitely happen, but yeah, how am I supposed to do that? Might be just a good a way to start. Folks, thank you for being such a great group and different activities. We've had a lot of you. I know it's already kind of a few minutes past. It's 5 in my location, might be 6 in your location, but I know that we promised, Svetlana, is it okay if we take a few more minutes? Because I know that we've promised people that some time for questions. So maybe at least we can have 1 or 2 questions. I want people to feel, I want you to feel that, you had the chance maybe to ask or consult something. So maybe there is 1 or 2 questions that I could help you out with.
So can I? Yeah, thank you. First of all, very interesting. Unfortunately, I got in like for last 15 minutes because of overlap, but I already loving it. I had a question about this case because my idea was also to ask how do you expect me to achieve this goal? But if we're talking about negotiation, for me, it sounds like what I'm asking and what he asked in return does not correlate. So he's asking for more than I initially asked. So what would be the appropriate way to sort of let him know that he just wants, it's not equal, like he wants way more than he's proposing me in return?
So here we're looking at how well do you know this person and how assertive you can be with them. If you remember this mind map that I showed, there are some people who have this idea that they like to be challenged. They join a discussion and they don't like working with yes people. They don't like if you say yes to every idea. They like to be challenged. If that's the case, maybe you can play this card, right? But if you know that this is something that can work, right? Interesting one.
Thank you.
Right. Maybe one more question from someone else.
Can you recommend some readings on that?
So very good question. Thank you, Oksana. Svetlana is going to email you a few resources. There are 4 links. One of them is actually a link to, I think, the Black Swan Group. That's the company that Chris Voss has, and also a link to his book, Never Split the Difference. So today, hopefully, I've gave you a little taster, just a little taster of those techniques. And like I said, don't take them as they are. Take them with you, practice. Maybe think about only one thing you'd like to take with you today. Maybe the calibrated no. The next time you're going to go and you negotiate your salary, maybe try with, would it be a really bad idea? Or maybe labels. Take something from this session and test it. That's it from my side, folks. Keep in touch. I think Svetlana has shared also my LinkedIn profile. If that's how you want to keep in touch, and if you want to send a message, I'm always happy for that. Thank you for being here, finding a little bit of time. I really hope you found these things productive.
Thank you, Jakub. Thank you, everyone. It really was very nice event, and you were very active. I enjoyed it, honestly, tonight. So thank you. Yes, you will have the follow-up letter with some useful links, and we will include Jakub's LinkedIn page. Thank you. Yes, join us on social media. Follow Product Management Community for more interesting events with Jakub. we'll plan something for the next year. Thank you, guys.
Thanks again. Thank you.
Jakob.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.